All right, welcome back, everyone. A short break, but perhaps a necessary one as we fill our energy again for this upcoming panel. If you're just joining us, welcome to the E5G show presented by Fierce Wireless. My name is Alejandro Pineda. I'm the Senior Director here for Conference Planning, and it's my pleasure to host the sessions today. Right, we just heard about the best practices in building an enterprise 5G service, but what about those challenges and how to get through them? So we actually have an exciting panel lined up. It's going to be moderated by Prakash Sangam from Tantra Analyst. He just moderated the previous one, so you'll be familiar with him. And he's joined by Bill Bloomingdale from Leidos and Bill Schultes from Antenna Systems. As always, we value your input and your Q&A, so you can use the Q&A tab just on the left-hand side of your screen above the chat window to send through your questions directly to our speakers and the moderator, and you can use the chat function to speak to your fellow attendees. All right, we're really here to listen to the experts, so I'm going to hand it over to Prakash to take us away with the panel. Over to you, Prakash.
Thank you, Alejandro. Indeed, we are here to, hear from the experts, and we'll get to them right away. Hello, everyone. I hope you listened to our previous panel where we discussed the best practices of deploying 5G enterprise network and so on. And this one is kind of a follow-on, but it's still a major topic on its own. Even if you're not listening to it live, you can always go back and listen it on record mode, the previous session. So in this session, we are focusing on what are the major challenges of enterprise 5G networks and how to overcome them. And we have an excellent panel to discuss that topic with. Let me start with some quick introductions. This will be a repeat if you are in the previous session. I am Prakash Sangam. I'll be moderating the session. In terms of my background, I am the founder and principal at Tantra Analyst. We are a 3-year-old boutique tech industry analysis, research, and advisory firm covering 5G, AI, IoT, and other tech areas. I have personally more than 25 years of experience in mobile industry, working for AT&T, Ericsson, and Qualcomm. And I write for Forbes. I have my own section at RCR Wireless News and other publications, and also host a podcast called Tantra's Mantra. Well, enough about me. Let's get to the experts. I request each of the panelists to give a brief introduction about themselves, about their company, and their experience with deploying enterprise networks. Let's start with uh,
Yeah, we're going to go by. I was Bill, and
okay,
the other
yeah,
Bill was William.
yeah. We'll start with Bill. How about that? Go ahead, Bill, and
Okay,
we'll call Bill and Williams.
right,
Right?
right.
Go ahead, Bill.
Okay, so I'm Bill Bloomingdale with Leidos, which is a system integrator, mostly focused on the federal space. Although we do a lot of, commercial businesses, including even some site development work, especially servicing the energy environment of like pole mounts, etc. Leidos is a pretty wide, diverse company where we focus on everything from defense, the intel community, a big civil area, which includes Department of Energy. We do a lot of ports and borders. If you've been through an airport, your bags have been screened by us. If your stuff has been imported into a country, your trucks have probably gone through screeners manufactured by us. And so we have a very diverse business. I mean, everything from change your password, big software creation environment, as well as complex IT and a little bit of manufacturing. So it's a neat business to be a part of. My experience in the wireless world has been about over 20 years working for operators and tier one OEMs, and working mostly within the radio networks, some in applications, a lot with DAS and small cells, and trying to work out like how do you actually deploy them at scale, manage them, operate them, etc. And then here at Leidos, my main focus is to try to help drive a 5G environment for how we take 5G to the federal space, and that includes everything from smart campuses, you know, touching UASs, etc. So it's very lots of fun, lots of challenges. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. William?
Sure. Bill Schultes, VP of Engineering at Antenna Systems. Antenna Systems is a systems integrator focusing on turnkey deployments for the enterprise. I've been in the wireless technology industry for 14 years, 12 of them spent in the system integrator space. So at Antenna, we've deployed networks ranging from NFL stadiums to healthcare facilities, college campuses, corporate headquarters. And so we will provide the turnkey deployment, manage network day two, and provide the ongoing services after the system is built.
All right, thank you guys. Great to have both here to discuss this topic with. Just a quick note to the audience, we will take audience questions. So please do keep them coming. You can type them on the Q&A section on the left-hand side of your screen. So coming to the subject, building enterprise cellular networks is an altogether different beast than typical Wi-Fi networks that many enterprises are well accustomed to, right? So cellular industry is trying hard to make deploying and managing cellular networks as easy as Wi-Fi with miniaturized and containerized base stations, integrated RAN and core networks, sell for easy install options and so on. But still, it's not there yet. Still some ways to go. So and considering that, and then with 5G itself, enterprise networks, enterprise domain as such is one of the key service areas for 5G compared to 4G, for example. So there are a lot of scope, a lot of opportunity, and obviously there are a lot of challenges as well that we'll discuss in this session. So let me start off. We talked about quite a few uh, use cases and applications throughout this event. Let me start with this basic question. So, when you or your customers are looking at 5G, what is their main concern? Is it to reduce or optimize cost, or simplify operations, or create new revenue opportunities, right? I mean, obviously you have to do all three of them, but what is kind of the leading cause for them to look at either cellular in general or 5G specifically, whether it is reducing and optimizing cost, or is it simplifying operations that bill that you mentioned you guys are doing, for example, or create new revenue opportunities? Let's start with William and then go to Bill after that.
Sure. I think that today's use cases are about streamlining processes that are existing and simplifying the operations. So, and in turn, you're kind of optimizing your costs that way. I think there'll be opportunity for new revenue streams as use cases evolve and the device ecosystem catches up. But I think today now is how can we do things more efficient than we were before with this low latency, higher throughput technology that previously was not available to us.
All right, Bill.
Yeah, I think a lot of this is very operational based. I mean, whether you're trying to get LAN everywhere across a 200 square mile campus, at an energy plant, or just trying to service health workers that are going out to visit the troopers. It really is about trying to drive efficiencies. I was just having a conversation the other day about this, about edge computing and the value of using the mobile network, and how that can also help drive lower costs. You have the ability to have low latency access to something like Wavelength or Azure or Google right there in the city without having to install hardware within your facility from a server stacks that you now have to manage. And so now you can really reduce latencies, which increases user experiences, and if you are able to maybe drive it through a alternative backhaul source to that resource, now we're on a video session here as a good case example. As COVID has driven more video services in these networks, they're taxed. A simple screen might take 3 to 5 seconds longer to load. If I can push that over to 5G and also the edge compute node, now maybe it takes a half second to load. And if you have a workforce, tens, 20 people over a day, you might save 5 hours. You might save a full body's worth of work just because of how you've used the network. So, and you didn't have to install any equipment on your site other than maybe a router and do the links, but you don't have a server plant that's going to get outdated or has to be managed and secured. So to me, there's so many opportunities to drive operational efficiencies and resiliency. Resiliency is another big one for us. Is there multipath? It's multipath, multi-network. Trying to make certain that there's always a connection to where you need to get data to.
All right, thank you very much. So,
Anyhow,
so can you give some examples of use cases and applications that you are able to actually use 5G today to solve the efficiency challenges and simplifying operations that you mentioned? Bill,
yeah,
specific
we've
examples
been
that
looking
you're
at
working with.
quite a few different ones. There's one that we're starting to investigate that is made by our Dynetics company called Ground Aware. That's heavy camera based with a radar, so you can pop that at a location for perimeter security. The radar says, "Hey, there's somebody over there." The cameras can be pan tilted, and then you can do all the analytics there at the edge, and then just send the parametrics up or as you need the video. And using 5G for that, now you have a good backhaul. You don't have an expensive line to put in and have to feed a bunch of expensive cameras back. So there's solutions like that. We're looking at UAS kind of solutions, and those would need some low latency control system access, ideal for 5G environments. We're doing tactical, a lot of AR based that need the solutions today. So we're doing some like little pack up tactical kits with that. Very cool stuff.
Cool. William, I'm sure you've seen many of the examples and implemented as well in terms of improving, simplifying operations and improving efficiency. Why don't you tell a few of them to us?
So I think when it comes to the use cases with 5G and what the enterprise is requiring, it's more about, well, what use cases can they solve today. So today the use cases for them, smart building, IoT, getting those devices off of the Wi-Fi, removing the congestion there. They get the high throughput access to their data in the cloud, like Bill was just saying. They can kind of define their own coverage area inside of their building or their venue. They get access to those low latency business applications for warehousing, logistics. They're all applications for today. Some of the technology showcase use cases that are coming soon, that are kind of inspiring the use cases in the healthcare, the different wearables that are being pitched in the healthcare industry to streamline the medical information from the patient to the doctor. You have the immersive learning and the education sector. AR and VR, like Bill was saying, that's also kind of that's the showcase piece of what 5G can do. And then you have the R&D use cases that are the pilots, proof of concepts that as 5G evolves, that we'll see those, the smart everything, big applications for 5G. But for today, I think it's a lot of those use cases that the business can solve now to start generating that ROI. And then once that foundation layer or foundation network is built, then they can start adding on use cases on top of it.
Very well. So, As I said in the beginning, cellular is kind of a different kind of a beast compared to what enterprise are have been dealing with so far. For example, Wi-Fi. Do enterprises really understand what it takes, why they need a specific technology, what it takes to implement, deploy, and manage them from a complexity and cost perspective, or is it that vendors have to basically educate them first before they realize what the benefits are? How are you seeing it, or are they well versed and kind of you can basically start off hitting the road right away? You don't have to kind of sell the concept to them to get interested in 5G. Let's start with William.
Sure. I think a big part of uh, of at least our role now is the education on what you can do with technology and what is the right solution for the customer's use case, right? So
Mm-hmm.
4G is still a very viable technology. 4G came and it brought all the consumer use cases. It brought the streaming and access to networks and higher throughput than 3G, right? So it's
Mm-hmm.
still a very viable technology. Now, what will the enterprise do with 5G? Do you really need 5G? I think 5G will bring business use cases in the future, but there's some applications that can be solved with 4G. So I think a big part of what we do is the education to the customer and explain to them what type of network will solve their problems today, and then take it from there.
Okay, Bill.
I think the answer is mixed. There's some users, especially ones that have high density, high mobility, high reliability. They seem to get it.
Mm-hmm.
There's others who are just trying to keep their networks going. They haven't really studied it. Maybe they don't have a modernization plan really kicked off yet. I think they struggle a little bit more with the concept. It's like, well, that's AT&T, that's Verizon. Why should I put this local?
Yeah.
And then you got in between, and it's interesting. I hear in the federal space, especially in the DoD side, 5G name dropped a lot as part of like just a digital modernization concept. If you bring uh, a full 5G private network into your environment, you get the orchestration, you get the software defined networking, you get all of these basically modern plus, I mean, cutting edge IT concepts and solutions that you can also apply to the rest of your enterprise. So if you already have a modernization platform coming, it's really easy to add 5G into it because it's really just an application with radios on the end. Or if you're starting from scratch, you can do it that way. So it really is kind of in between what we're seeing there from that. And I think just making extra complexity there is that they're also getting messages from Wi-Fi 6, Wi-Fi 6E,
Yeah.
and so there's a lot of questions of like, well, why should I do this versus that? And Wi-Fi 6E is going to be a good promise, but it's kind of in the same spot with 5G. The ecosystem isn't there yet, um,
Yeah.
and so there's a lot of head scratching of which one should I go after.
Yeah, that's I think is the lot of complexity, and they don't know the basics, right? They only know the use cases that they want implemented. They don't have all the background on what is better for what and so on. I think that I think is a critical juncture, critical area where many industries have to come together to make that selection things seamless. So looking, continuing that same thread, the decision on whether to deploy your own private network versus utilize public network is critical one, right? How do you see enterprises making that decision? They letting their system integrators decide and let them know, or they have some notions that they have to deploy this in a certain way and such. What has been your experience in terms of using a private dedicated network, which is expensive and a lot of commitment, versus utilizing public networks and then maybe have your own slice or something like that? What have been your experience? So let's start with Bill. Go to William.
You want to take that? You want me to go, William?
Good.
Okay. I think it really comes down to what is the acquisition method that the company's willing to afford. Um,
Hmm.
you have set budgets. Are you able to access extra capital, or do you got to fit it within my operations? And what does my team look like? Um, and can I really hire the right folks to manage a very complicated 5G network? If you're doing Industry 4.0, and I want to eventually get to time sensitive networking and very intense 5G features like that, well, you probably should hire some folks that actually can spell 5G, not just mention it. But at the same time, I really think that it's going to open the door for more network as a service solutions. I think many enterprises are going to struggle to figure out how to connect the dots if they're doing ORAN or even working with a large monolithic OEM to make certain that these features are actually delivered, they work, and then how do you implement them in my environment? Um, it can be very complicated. If network slicing is done today in multiple ways. If in 2 to 3 years, when full 5G standards network slicing comes in, it can get very complicated within the network. Um, and you need good partners to help you on the system side to make certain that that part is managed. I mean, I've worked at several OEMs before, and some of the features are not priority because of somebody else's requirements. And so, if you're really banking on features, it's going to be tough. So, with that, it really kind of opens the door of how are you going to acquire it? How are you going to manage it over the next 5 to 7 years?
Right.
And I really do think that network as a service is going to be big. I mean, it's so big right now that the mobile operators have all launched their own services, whether it's full private, semi-private, or you're just using their network in some way. That just tells you something that the community that Preston talked about with doing private networking and CBRS and now Ongo, um, has really taken hold. And so, in reaction, the operators are going after it. So I think the enterprises right now have a lot of choice, potential to get to their end game. They're just going to have to make certain that they're very vertically driven in their decisions of partners and equipment. You don't want to put RAN in that you're going to have to rip out in 2 years because, well, I wanted to do this feature and I don't have this connector on it that will make it work. So, yeah,
Yeah,
William.
William. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for most enterprises, that anytime you start talking about a cellular technology, they just assume that they would have to go to one of the major operators in order to get that
Hmm.
technology. It's easy for them, right? Um,
Yeah.
they just have to buy a cellular plan and the devices, and they have access to that network. If they bring it into their building, there's some drawbacks in that they would have to, even if they would build out the network, they are still reliant on those cellular operators to bring a signal source to deploy it within their building. So that's a drawback that starts to make private networks look appealing. If the goal is to just enable connectivity for these devices that are in a building, now private, which they didn't have access to a few years ago, they're learning that they do have access to. They can manage that network. They can build that network. They can put coverage where they need it and customize it and build it on their own timeline too, which is most important for some of these um, customers. Um, the downside, like Bill said, that you need to have someone manage it, right? So most have IT folks who can manage their own existing infrastructure, but managing a 5G or cellular network is not something that they have the expertise in doing. So the managed service solution or partnering with vendors and integrators is where I think in the short term, that's where the enterprises will be looking to go to. But maybe over time that they will start to bring those resources in house as well.
Yeah. Yeah, can I just do a follow on? I was looked through my notes. I wanted to make another comment. Is that if you have large campuses, like I mentioned, some of these energy facilities that have hundreds of square miles, and you might have college campuses the same way. You may need to do a hybrid approach where you actually do use a mobile operator for the outside coverage, and then do your own internal coverage, and then work with the operator to get like an MPLS or some kind of APN kind of management where you can route your data local effectively, and that's another way to try to help manage your cost of the acquisition of the network, um, so that you're not having to become a small tier three mobile operator to build out your campus. You put it where you need it, use Wi-Fi where you need it, use things like point to multi-point where you need it, because it's all mixed use. But that's a big area as well that we're definitely studying, and been talking to many of the operators about some of the use cases we're trying to implement here coming up.
Yeah, I agree. So the network as a service that you mentioned, or the managed network and such, I think those will be big. Usually, if you look at enterprises, even the Wi-Fi network, they used to maintain their own, but a lot of with cloudification, it's everything is kind of outsourced, right? Everything is sold and bought as a service, and I think the time is ripe for network to be that as well. So when you look at that kind of a consideration, who you think are better positioned to address this large enterprise 5G opportunity? Obviously, operators are looking at it as well, and then you have large enterprise players who are very close to the enterprises themselves. They already provide service. You could think they are better placed, and then could be third independent entities who want to do it on their own. So where do you think who are better positioned, especially between the large enterprise players, Dell, AMC, IBM, and others, versus cellular companies, operators like Verizon and AT&T, who have large enterprise, teams as well?
Yeah.
Any views there who are better positioned? Let's start with William. Go to Bill.
Um, I think it really depends on who has the team that can build a solution for you. If you're um, looking for um, a specific equipment set or a specific vendor, sometimes they only have access to certain equipment sets,
Mhm.
right? Where maybe a more of a consultant engineer or a technology advisor, even the integrator space, they have a lot of different resources to be able to go and acquire pieces to build out your network the way it needs to be built in order to solve the need versus something that's more vertical portfolio based that only can pick from a certain product set. So I think that each has their own benefits, but as these networks are built out, the flexibility to tailor the solution to solve a need should be paramount over going with a specific operator or vendor or something like that for the enterprise.
And also, as Bill mentioned, there are a lot of these could be hybrid networks, right? So you just can't rely on one company with only one set of technologies or products. You need somebody who can kind of holistically solve the problem, or the whole connectivity problem, rather than just one specific narrow issue, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think what the end goal for the enterprise is to just add spectrum to their building. Whether they already have their Wi-Fi network, we're looking at commercial cellular networks, private networks. Is it some sort of LP-WAN network for their IoT? How could we just get more spectrum in this building to enable all of these applications?
Bill?
Yeah, I think in my space that's a tough question because of how the acquisition is completed. It's like just thinking about the DoD and the way that they've run the OTAs, from a like trying to do these experiments. We have this base has this core and RAN, this base has this mobile operator, this base has that mobile operator, um, and so then the question becomes is which devices are actually on the campus. Are you buying phones from Vodafone, Verizon? TELUS, globally, and how does that impact how you actually try to figure out how to do your networks? If you're trying to do stuff with supply chain, you want to send an IoT device that has a SIM card in it around the globe or just across the U.S. There's decisions you're going to have to make about, okay, well, if I'm in California at the port and it's on AT&T and it comes to the East Coast and my shipping location is Verizon, how does that SIM get on my network, and or how does that device get on the network? And so, um, I think there's probably more to the design of that where, somebody like William was talking about with a consultant engineering company to help you with, hey, we may have to do a multi-SIM device, or something like what I'm just going to name drop, like Creditpoint has, where you can do multiple SIMs in one product, and it can take on an entity of AT&T or Verizon or Vodafone or whatever private. That kind of thing is probably is going to need to be evaluated. Um, the other big issue really just comes down, as William was saying, is the radio heads that you need, and their availability. 5G SA is in the baby infantile stage of being released, and so there's a lot of one-to-one or monolithic setups. Whether even if it's O-RAN, it's somewhat monolithic. Of we've only interacted with these companies. So we're still a few years away of Lego block of RAN and core and all these pieces. There's promise there, but to make it simple, I think it's really going to come down to how can you manage a central core with your SIMs, as well as what are the feature sets you're looking for. I don't think there's any one answer that's right or wrong there right now, because it's still very early in the race. I don't think
Yeah, well,
we haven't even finished lap one. So
yeah,
now
agreed,
4G, on
agreed.
the other hand, I think you could probably pick some winners, but we're talking 5G. So, but
Yeah, I mean,
4G is pretty stable.
uh, correct. I mean, 5G kind of is a subject topic, but I think the challenges and the solutions transcend technologies, right? It's kind of
Yeah,
cellular as a technology helping enterprise, I think, is where kind of analysis is done in many enterprises, in my view. So security is one of the main concern, right? And there are multiple facets to it. I know that goes into many of the decisions as well. One of them is, say, on-prem data storage, whether your control plane is elsewhere, data plane is on premises, or you want some high security cases may want to have everything contained in their private network, for example, no data leaves or the control leaves the premises. What have been your experiences dealing with use cases like when dealing with governments, Department of Defense
right.
is a great example, as you mentioned, Bill.
Yeah.
Any general sense of what is the security point of view when enterprises are making these decisions?
Yeah,
Either whichever you want to take it.
yeah. I think the first thing I'd like to say on that is that edge computing is going to break a lot of folks' security models. You just look at how it's architected. You're on a mobile operator 5G network connected to the let's just say it's wavelength, so with Verizon, and just starting this example, and you're an ambulance operator, you got an AR headset on, you're driving on a call, you have a patient, you're doing a remote doctor environment, you show up at the hospital, and your phone, which is connected to Verizon, hands over to the Wi-Fi network. Well, the way it's architected, you lose connection to wavelength. So you just lost your app up in the cloud. You have to figure out how to move your session to some other server. Is that in the building? Is that in the central cloud? Is that in the region? And then you might have another user on the might be BYOD, who's on AT&T, and now he has you have to have it on Azure. So now you have a multi-cloud environment, and he has the same problem when he shows up. It may or may not be able to get back to that location, depending on how the thing's configured. Um, so when you start to think about security from just an application standpoint, apps have to now be multi-cloud enabled. Most folks who build like an IoT, they drop into the Azure platform or the AWS platform, and that's it, right? But now, if you're going to be multi-mobile operator, you're going to have to be able to touch just about anybody. And so now, how does an app manage across that? And at the same time of using this AR app, I'm trying to send email, which is going to another location, and I might be trying to access the health records, which is going to another location. And each one of these feeds has to have its own security, feed on it. You can't do like a central button, location, which some enterprises still do. You have to be able to have multi fingers of how you do it. So zero trust is going to be really big with this. How do you manage user authentications, app by app? The perimeter is going to break, and then you have to manage the encryption. If you're in the government space, and some of the stuff we're working on is there's a concept called NSA. It's the NSA's group, not non-standalone, but the three-letter agency. That's the CSFC, which is Commercial Solutions for Classified, where you're doing a nested tunnel encryption to protect your data, and that adds even more complication because now I have a traditional kind of VPN and then like a TLS, HTTPS in the middle. And so, how do you move that in the same environment? If you're on the battlefield and overseas, and you're moving from squad pod to squad pod, you have to be able to move. If you're in, just on the campus, accessing at the, an AR app, as people coming in on a guard application, how do you manage that? Even in a commercial environment, you take a guard application, he has his AR headset on, he's at the gate, he's checking people, you probably have, secure access for that. Later in the day, you may move him into the building. He might be connected to a different edge server. So they have the same problem, but maybe not have to do two layers. I think the other big thing just to bring up on security is really considering on these networks is, now you have AWS, you have Azure, you have Google within the mobile operator. They state, and all the operators state, well, we're secure on this, right? Well, where does that security end inside of the environment? And where do I need to pick it up? And so, what this really just means it's on the app providers, and this is where that zero trust environment comes into. It's my app. I'm just using some connectivity. I don't care what the connectivity is. It just happens to be low latency, but my app has to be secure, so I'm responsible. So I think everybody just needs to take a posture of that's not my network, and to secure their apps that way. It's a very interesting space right now for that. I mean, we can get into like, well, is 5G secure, not secure, or more secure than 4G or Wi-Fi or blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, it comes down, have you protected your app? And can you move that protection as you move through the different networks? So,
Correct. Yeah, thanks. William, any thoughts there?
Yeah, I think that it's as the number of devices grow, right? The attack surface just gets so much larger when you have all these IoT devices, and you're taking the workforce outside of their traditional desk office environment and moving them out and about. That the application security becomes even more important than it was before, because I think before the IT departments could kind of manage it internally, but now everybody's mobile, right? So how do you manage and secure that mobile workforce? And then on top of that, we're no longer just laptops and smartphones. We are every device is now connected to your network. So how do you handle that layer of security too?
And the thing is this, it's a multi-cloud environment and when you look at cellular providers, if you're using public providers, it is a multi-operator environment as well. So when you
Yeah.
go to any enterprise, it is extremely hard to say that, oh, you be on either just only this cloud provider and only on this and operator, right? And with BOID in many enterprises now, you cannot just imagine all of your employees or all of your folks on only one network or one cloud. How are you guys addressing that challenge? I mean, that basically multiplies all the issues and the challenges by few times, right? It's not just a security, but also manageability, subscriptions, cost, and everything is multiplied by that, because of this multi-cloud and multi-operator scenarios. Have you seen how operators are and how enterprises are managing it? Do you have any suggestions or anything like that? You know, whoever want to take that, Bill or William?
Good, Bill.
Yeah, I'll speak to it.
Mm-hmm,
I think that I don't think they understand it yet,
mm-hmm,
and B, really, I don't think most of the industry really started to understand it until they started to see how it was actually being architected.
mm-hmm,
And so now that the edge computing is now accessible within the mobile operators on 4G and 5G, they're
mm-hmm,
going, hey, this is how it's done and what we need to do. The operator position is just stay on my network, but we just talked about a few of the situations that make that hard. Would love just to stay on 5G. I think that the other, Leidos in particular is working on a fairly significant effort, which we call our edge to cloud, which I think is called by several folks out in their industry. But what we have really put together is a management platform that's Kubernetes based. We can spin up anything from a Raspberry Pi to AWS, Azure, etc., and be able to manage those the environment as well as the apps. Single pane of glass across the globe, and that really brings up gives us a lot of value in being able to manage. Uh, edge apps as well as the 5G apps themselves as they're at the edge. We're working with companies like Intel, who's also a sponsor here with their Smart Edge, and and then a few of the operators looking at their stuff, and some of the other equipment providers, Nokia and others, and for trying to understand how we can uh, inject that into that edge to cloud environment. But we also have a big push on apps just so that we can manage the multi-cloud. We have a lot of customers that are multi-cloud today, and it's going to be interesting. I wouldn't be surprised if that over time that maybe companies like AWS, Azure do regional areas that are multi-operator versus single operator. I don't know if that's in the plans or not, just from the complexity of trying to manage edge compute. So I think T0 right now it is what it is, but maybe T+5 it'll be central per city or something like that.
cool. So, William, can you talk about some of the challenges that you have seen, some of your customers have seen in terms of implementing enterprise cellular networks, how you overcome them, what are some of the tidbits or the clues that you can provide enterprises and the service providers looking to address this space who are not already in there, be it 4G or 5G?
Yeah, I think the first challenge that needs to be solved is defining what you're going to use this for, right? We have some customers who we hear, well, we want 5G, and there's no real reason why they want 5G. It's just that they've heard the term and that they want it. I don't think this is and if you build it, they will come type of technology, right? I think there needs to be an end game in mind when you start to build it out, whether it's a healthcare or like a gaming type venue or an enterprise venue. There needs to be a base technology or base application, and then you build on top of that. and trying to change the way the enterprise approaches their connectivity problems is one of the biggest challenges, because they've been so focused on Wi-Fi that they're not necessarily thinking outside the box at how they can solve today and tomorrow's problems, but this new technology can do that, right? So I think that's one of the biggest challenges, is to get them out of the gate and get them running with what this technology can do.
Bill, anything specific and challenges that you've seen and that you have addressed and solved it to make it real for the people who are listening it?
Yeah, I would say that from just kind of building on like selecting apps. I mean, we're we've been hearing from our customers that they're trying to figure out how to take all the data that they're collecting and do something with it. So there's a lot of AI, and like, well, it's better if we push this AI to the edge. It's more efficient. You have these large facilities that may have antiquated networks. It's cheaper to hop them with like a 5G environment versus trying to update all of the infrastructure. And so doing that, well, I don't want to have to then backhaul all of this information at real time speeds, but I need to process it real time. And so um, a lot of AI at the edge is driving a lot of the concepts. So
Okay, so we're kind of closing on our timing now. Probably this will be my last question. So, and then we all know, right? The cellular technology, 5G, is constantly changing. We are at the very early stage of early stage of 5G right now. It's only release 15 that is commercialized. Release 16 is already finalized. Release 17, 18 is on the horizon. And even if you look at each of the releases, there are tons of features. It's sometimes even hard for the telco players themselves, be it OEMs, operators, and others, to follow all of those things and realize what is good for them, what is needed for them, and so on. So when enterprises get into this and they got 5G, its magnitudes higher complexity and difficult for them to follow all of these developments and to understand what they mean, how they benefit them, and how they can implement them, and so on, right? So from structurally, from focus point of view and such, where do you think enterprises are, and any advice you can give them on how best to manage and maneuver all of these things that are happening with 5G? And I mean, historically, they basically they were deploying one network and then keep on going with it for few years, and then somebody comes and tries to upgrade them and so on, right? But with cellular, that's not the case. The upgrade cycles are much faster, and you bring different levels, not just a few improvements, but different levels of improvement with each of the release and each of the upgrades. How your advice to enterprises on how to manage that? Who wants to take it? William, you want to start, or?
Sure. We don't get too many enterprise customers that are talking in 3GPP standards. Not too many of them know what that is or what to do with
Exactly.
it.
Yeah.
And when you look at the 4G standards, it took about 10 years and 6 different revisions to get through to where it is today. So,
Correct.
like you said, we're in the early stages of 5G standardization and where it can go. And as these new releases become available and commercialized, there'll be more features that are built on top of that, right? Um, I think what's most important for the enterprise is to look at how they want to grow their network and put in a base infrastructure to build out that network so that it can grow with them over time. So enabling the connectivity and fiber and the category 6A and some of the high bandwidth mediums to connect those edge devices, so that as the technology changes, new spectrum becomes available, that they have the infrastructure in place to build out these networks as they evolve and the new features become available, like you were saying.
Okay, very well. And going with the network as a service model kind of helps them, right? They don't have to worry about how to upgrade any of that. I mean, they basically say these are my requirements, and as a system provider, you go ahead and that's your headache on how you provide. Give me the service I want for the application services that I have to run from my point of view, right? So
Yeah.
that's cool. Bill?
Yeah, it's a difficult thing because, as you said, the 3GPP probably has, three buckets of features. You got, stuff for the operators, stuff for verticals, and then esoteric stuff that probably never will be implemented, but people work on.
Yeah.
And then it's a pick list in there. I want, a number 7 with a 62, and and who knows what the equipment manufacturer can make. I mean, um, you know, coming from OEMs, it can be very expensive to try to get a particular feature that you want. So unless you're, a Fortune 100 company, you may not be able to afford to push that feature request. And there's so much going on in that area. It's probably, if you really wanted to keep up with the space, I mean, joining groups like the Ongo Alliance would be probably the most ideal. While they may not touch all aspects of what you're trying to do in your business, you'll get enough flavor, and you'll probably be able to meet vendors that and suppliers and service providers that can really help you in your business. And you go there, learn, and just kind of engage. That's probably going to be the best way because, I mean, even the mobile operators, I think, have a real hard time keeping up with it, with everything going on. And you really, unless you're a really large company, it's probably hard to influence those standards. So it's more just trying to see, keep abreast with what's coming. I think the other challenge that they have is most of the companies like to sell what's on the truck. The operators like to sell what's on the truck, not what's coming in 6 months, not what's coming in 2 years. And so it makes it even more difficult to try to get this information out of some of the operators or some of the equipment manufacturers because they're not going to commit to, hey, we're going to do time sensitive networking or this LBS feature until it's in the standards and released and they understand what it is. And when companies like Qualcomm may or may not be able to service it in whichever chipset it is, if it's not just software upgrade. So it could be a challenge. So I would go after things like the Ongo Alliance. Is probably the best one for smaller enterprises, anyways, to go after. So you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, very well. I think that was our last question. We're almost at time right now. Thank you very much for an engaging discussion. Um, and thank you to all the audiences who came up with some of the questions that we tried to include. Sorry, we could not answer all of them. Um, it was indeed great moderating this panel. Hope to see you on the next one. Thank you again. Back to you, Alejandro.
Great. Thank you very much, Prakash, and of course to Bill Schuldes and Bill Bloomingdale for a great panel. And thank you all for joining us for this session, and to our partners, of course, who you see listed on screen, who support us and make this kind of event possible. All right, well, that session's over, but we do have some more content and information coming your way. We'll be back at 12:15 p.m. Eastern, so for those of you in a different time zone, that's about 15 minutes from now, and we'll hear from companies such as Qualcomm or Verizon on their views on how to deploy an enterprise network. So we hope to see you there, but in the meantime, on behalf of Fierce Wireless and myself, thank you again, and we hope to see you soon.